we're recording this for YouTube guys to catch later, but I didn't mention for those of you guys who are doing this live that we have three parts: inspiration, contemplation, and then community conversation. And we'll just move from one to the other. You can't get lost, but they're all three meditative forms. Okay, that's our program. All right. Well, the last time we talked, I left you with a question, which was, "What am I living for?" Big question, big question. And I'm going to add another question that hopefully will connect with it. And that was on our screensaver. I'm going to put that up again. Hopefully, it's not going to knock us off, but I'm going to, whoops, put it up again. Just so the people on YouTube can see it. Yeah, picture of Martin Buber and also the a bit of Aramaic next to him. Uh, I'm going to give you a few words of Buber to start off with. His classic work. I'm going to pull the heart of that out today to help us uh, look at both what we're living for and what we're longing for. Here's just three short quotes from Martin Buber from I and Thou, which is actually quite a hard book to read now because the best translation of it has disappeared, or unless you want to pay $40 for a for a paperback, which I don't. I'll start again with the quote: "Everything and everyone is longing to be truly seen and reverenced. This is what happens in an I thou encounter." Martin Buber. And he said, "If I were to speak into the heart of your being, this is the word I would use, thou. I would use it to speak to the part of you that cannot be named. The part of you that is divine and forever free. The world is lit by eternity from within." So those three Buber quotes are really a path for where we're going to follow. And again, a little bit about Buber. Uh, Martin Buber was born in Vienna of an Austrian Jewish family. He lived and taught theology, but was always more interested in experiencing God than in talking about God. And that's the mark of a mystic. So he was a Jewish theologian, but really a mystic at his heart. During the Nazi rise to power, Buber fled to Jerusalem in 1938 with his wife and family. What Buber found when he arrived in Jerusalem, however, shook him to his core, and uh, we're gonna get to that at the very end of the teaching, if we can get through this teaching. Uh, so again, what do humans really long for? And I'm going to sort of view that question by applying Martin Buber's core mystic insight of I and thou, the I thou relationship, and what that really means. We're going to explore that and integrate that with what many of us have been learning about whole brain living. Basically, integrating Buber's wisdom, the wisdom of a Jewish mystic, with Jill Bolte Taylor. You could call a Hoosier neuroanatomist because she's from Indiana and she's back in Indiana, but she was the one who wrote Whole Brain Living. So we're going to really do a dance between these two. And hopefully, it will shed some inner light on what human beings long for. I think an important question. And the messes that we create on this planet because we don't really know what we truly long for. So that's going to be the talk. And I just have a kind of whole brain map in front of me, so I'm just going to riff off of that and try to notice when I drop if I do, but I'm fingers crossed here. I and thou. Okay, we're working for starters with this idea of what an I thou relationship means. Well, first of all, I and thou means the whole brain. Because when I say I, we're talking about both our left and right hemispheres and what they add to the picture. They give us those, seriously, they give us two modes of being. There's not only the we inside of me, as Jill Bolte Taylor says, involves four separate beings, but they sort of split into two kinds of modes of being. The left brain uh, is what this mode of being would be called I it by Buber, and the right brain is called the I thou. And human beings need both of those forms of relating to the world, I it and I thou. But if you only have one, uh, you really are going to be in trouble. Uh, you couldn't survive just in the right brain. Jill Bolte Taylor uh, was in her right brain for 6 weeks when she had a stroke, but she had a lot of help, and most people don't survive if their left brain goes offline. The I it brain. Okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit of what it means to have an I it relationship, which is all our left brain can do, and then I'm going to talk about what the right brain really adds. What if we lack anything in our culture, and if the world lacks anything, it's more access to the right brain. But the I it left brain, that kind of relationship, well, first of all, it's fueled by fear. Okay, and that's helpful. You wouldn't want to be fearless. You wouldn't want to be without fear because it can save your life. Sometimes you say, "I'm not going down that street," or in a pinch, you get the fear. It gets the adrenaline and the cortisol, and you could run fast or just fight or whatever to survive. So that's how the left brain works. It's fueled by fear. It's about your survival. It's your survival operating system. But its way it deals with everything is sort of I it. Um, in the left brain, there are the two parts. There's the thinker, the planner, the strategic part of our brain, uh, which basically helps us get stuff done. We need to do certain things to you know uh, survive and flourish in this. You can't flourish if you don't survive. So there's our upper left brain is the part that can think, reason, analyze, all that. That's the thinker part. The lower left brain is the emotional left brain, which is the shadow. It holds all of our hurts, wounds, all the parts of ourselves that we had to shave off and orphan because they wouldn't. Most of it wouldn't work uh, in our family of origin. We couldn't have survived being that. So it all goes into the shadow realm. We're going to learn much more about the shadow next week because I'm going to talk about Jung next week, C.G. Jung. But just basically, we have the thinker and the strategist that gets stuff done, and then we have sort of a wounded emotional child part of us that holds all of our wounds uh, and is sort of reactive, that part of yourself. Now, if that's all we have, and that's all that actually we're taught, in most formal education, we're taught how to develop the left brain, which, thank goodness, there's things to learn there. But if that's all we are, I mean, that's all AI is really. It's left brain. uh, you live life with a kind of driven nature, and we do need drive to solve problems, but uh, if that's all you have and you don't have much access to the right brain, you'll be sort of driven from thing to thing. It's sort of if that's all you have online. Now, the right brain, and this is really where we want to look today. The motive being out of the right brain. This is fueled by love, by the way, which is far stronger than fear. It's not even on the same playing field as fear. Love is what moves everything. It's the energy of the universe. Uh, uh, you can only have an I thou relationship from your right brain. This is a sacred operating system as opposed to the survival operating system. We need both. The sacred operating system is about relating to not only uh, the divine, but to everything else. It's a relational way. The other way is a tactical way. And so the sacred operating system is definitely relational. In the two parts of this are our heart and soul. We're really going to talk about in Jung next week about a vocabulary of soul because we've lost the vocabulary of soul in our culture. Soul might mean music or soul music, but it's actually our center. It's actually what goes on beyond this. I'm sitting with my big brother Jim every day. I think I'm on day 38 or day 39 is sitting with him out of the 49 days. And I'm sitting with his soul. His body has been cremated. Now, where the survival operating system, if you're operating from that, it has a kind of drivenness to a life. In a certain situation, you need drive. Um, but if that's all you have, then you have this feeling of just you're driven. You never, it's a different feel from if you have access to the sacred operating system. Uh, and if that actually becomes your dominant system, you need both, but it's a question of who's master and who's servant here. If you're if your sacred operating system, your I thou system is the master, uh, then you primarily live a life that is drawn, not driven. Those two words can always tell you uh, which brain you're operating out of. And drivenness can lead to, among other things, obsession or addiction. Drawn is the feeling of being in an I thou relationship with reality. Now, the heart and soul, the soul is the emotional part of the right brain. And rather than being the wounded child, it's more like the curious child. It's the thing that wants to explore, wants to expand. In general, the right brain, when you're in it, you expand the life. Life wants to expand. We want to realize how big this universe is, and we're part of it. And so the universe is always expanding, and the right brain is an I thou relationship expands everything. An I it relationship narrows everything, shrinks everything. Just the way we shrink when we're afraid, we sort of close down. So it's a very different feel, and the soul is about expanding. More on the soul next week with the talk on Jung. Now the heart, we just think of the heart maybe as the beating organ in the body, but we're talking about the spiritual heart. The best way to think of the spiritual heart is that it's sort of like the Bluetooth on your computer or on your iPhone. It connects you with everything. It connects your individual soul, your absolute unique soul, with the spirit, the one spirit. I mean, right now, we got 35 or so souls on this broadcast, but it's just one spirit. Okay, lots of waves, one ocean, and so, but the heart is what connects your individual soul to what I think Emerson called the oversoul. the big soul, which another word for it would be spirit. Okay, so very different operating systems, and we need both. But I contend that the problems we're facing is because we've made the survival operating system the master, and we really know very little about the right brain sacred operating system. Now, in terms of relationship, what's the difference between the left brain and the right brain? Well, I contend, and Boober and Jill would agree that if you want to have a relationship, it's got to come through your right brain. Uh, and it should be a true relationship with a human being, with the spirit, with your soul, with your beloved or partner, with your family, with your friends, with a community like we have here, with a nation, with the world, with the earth. If you want a relationship that's actually a genuine relationship, an I thou relationship, uh, it has to come from the right brain. You can't do there's a lot of important, the most important things you can't do with your left brain. It can help us survive. And the problem is when we leave the right brain out and we're living in a left brain world, well, sort of the mess we've got here. So now, what does it mean to have an I thou relationship? Well, I didn't know when I got married, 54 years ago. I didn't know any of this stuff. And to be honest, the problems that we've had, Pam and I have had uh, serious problems for maybe the first 40 years. A couple times the marriage totally break down was because I didn't understand what an I thou relationship was. An I it relationship treats who you're trying to relate to as less than you, as a it, as something to be managed like furniture around the room. That's an I it relationship, and that's fine for moving furniture around the room. But when you're talking about living beings, the only real way to relate, if you want to really call it a relationship, and took us 40 years to realize that and to take it to the other level where we actually have now uh, an I thou relationship between us. Pam and I wrote vows together at that point, which she says two of them, I say two of them. I mean, in our culture, men and women are not both thous. Part of the repression of women for 10,000 years is the men were the I and the women were the it. Let's face it, 10,000 years of I it kind of view of the world. And then you can uh, also, you can't relate to God as an it, which many people do. So it ruins religion too. You cannot. God is the ultimate thou, and we are as well. And so you have to have an I thou relationship. 13th century German mystic Meister Eckhart. He said the eye with which I see God, the eye with which God sees me is the same eye with which I see God. He was establishing an I thou relationship, what Ken Wilber calls an I relationship, as opposed to having an I it relationship. So, like any kind of definition of the one spirit or God, uh, it just doesn't work because you're making it an it. If you could define it, it would be an it. And let me tell you, you can't be defined either because you are a thou. You have at your very core a soul which has the spark of the divine, which is why you can relate to the divine, but not the normal way we relate with things. Allah, the name for the divine in in Islam, Allah means the no thing, the nothing. It doesn't mean nothing like we think of just vacant. It just means the 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 entity that is not a thing. It's a thou, you see. That's what Allah really means. In the same way that traditional Jewish people will not say the name of the divine. Only the high priest on the high holy day would speak it once. They just had these four little letters but nobody, well, Christians pronounce it, because we think we're better than, we're the New Testament, and some ways we are, uh, so we say Yahweh. Those would be these four letters, and that already was insulting uh, our Jewish friends. So you know so if you want to have a relationship, whether it's your own kids, your wife, your husband, your best friends, this community, it's primarily coming through the right brain. We're training in this community, we're training by having experience of shifting from the left brain to the right brain. Now when you hear a talk like this, you're using both brains. If you're listening with the ear of the heart to whatever resonates, but I'm using words, and that's left brain. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is when you only have the left brain, when only that is online. Uh, Buber had a really interesting metaphor. He says, then you have the eclipse of God. And that could be personally, if you're just trying to relate to your whole life with your left brain, you'll have the eclipse of God. Long ago, oh, gee, a year and a half ago, or whenever we had that last great lunar eclipse or solar eclipse, we did use Pink Floyd, their song Eclipse. But Buber is saying when you're only in the left brain, it's like God is eclipsed. Now, see, when Buber went to Jerusalem fleeing the Nazis, it shook him to his core because he'd been fleeing Austria, where Nazis turned Jews into its. If you turn a people, an individual or a whole race of people into an it, it's not a person. And then you can, good Catholic, Lutheran, Germans put its in the oven, put its in the gas chamber, because these weren't people, they were vermin. They were less than. Where really, if you're a mystic, anything alive is a thou, you see. And that really shook because he was leaving where the Nazis turned Jews into its, and here he was in 1938, and the whole thing was in process of the Zionists turning the Arabs into its, and it's continued now for 76 years. That was when the Nakba came, and they just started taking people's lands and forcing them out because they felt like Arabs weren't human beings. They're Arabs, you know. Buber said this at that time. He said, human beings and even whole nations become blind to the presence of the divine in each other. Uh, and then you see where we are in 2025, the blindness. You're an undocumented person. Well, you're not a person. We can treat you like an it. We can rough you up. We can just snatch you off the streets in this country. And then then your family doesn't know where you are. I mean, we're treating you like you're less than a person. And in our own constitution, if any of these guys really favored it, and actually we're trying to keep it, it says everybody's supposed to get due process. Doesn't matter, just even undocumented people. Well, we're not even giving due process to the citizens that we snatch off the street. Uh, you can't, it takes a while for those people, if ever, to get out of the grasp of ICE. No. And so human beings or even whole nations become blind to the presence of the divine in each other. That's what the eclipse of God means. And when you actually have a sense of the divine, uh, you wouldn't uh, you wouldn't treat any living thing. Mystics actually take it all the way down to soil, to water. These things have a life to them. You could go into a handful of soil and you could find an incredible amount of life in there. It's really a living thing. Uh, the rainforest. Uh, Buber said that to come under Zion, to become to have a nation come to Zion under a holy banner uh, is to become a criminal. He said this in 1939. Well, obviously, that didn't. He didn't get a warm reception, but he kept to it. The next year, he helped found the Jewish League for Arab Rapprochement and Cooperation. So Jews and Arabs working together. Uh, he wanted to work for a binational state of Israel. He loved the idea of a nation of Israel, but he wanted it to be one nation with rights for all. Uh, and most radically, because they brought all that finally to the UN, but it just was, still to this day, uh, not not honored. But Buber's belief, this is where we'll end talk. He believed that nationhood, if you're going to have a nation, Israel, the United States nationhood should serve the well-being of the entire world. Let that sink in. That if you're in a nation, United States, Israel, France, nationhood should serve the well-being of the entire world, not just one's own nation. Now, that's a hell of a quote to think about. That you know, if we're just America first, and want to make America great again, but what about the world if we destroy the planet in the process? Yeah, so he was a visionary. He was a visionary. Yeah. And so what we have on our we're trying to understand our longing. I think we long for love, and love is relationship, and we don't realize why we don't have more of it. Well, we have to develop the right brain, and more on that next week when we look at Carl Jung's work as a psychologist.